2008 with the first election of Obama. And you can make the argument we lost in 2004 and 2000 as well with the election of Bush, both in the primary and then in 08. I'm sorry, in 04, the general, because he was an incumbent at that point. Real right wingers have not had one of their own in since probably Calvin Coolidge. There's not been a real right winger in there. Nixon was okay. Reagan was not completely bad. Reagan had his faults, but he also had his upside. Nixon was better than Reagan in a lot of ways, the more I read about Nixon. And that's the thing. That's very politically unpopular, especially with the older generation who's been told ever since they were a kid, Nixon bad, Watergate. Nixon bad, Watergate. But when you actually do research, you know there's more to the story. So I wanted to read to you about that. Let's now, before we go to commercial break, a quick one. It's only going to be a fast one. Let me now go to this. I want to look at some other Supreme Court cases, some other court cases that have happened so that we can look at it together. High Court upholds Mississippi social media age verification law. So this was interesting. I'm going to read it to you. When, how, if it loads. Supreme Court on Thursday, it's funny how the article says High Court. It's the highest court. Supreme Court on Thursday refused for now to block enforcement. So block enforcement, don't get it twisted, of a Mississippi law aimed at regulating the use of social media by children, an issue of growing national concern. Well, that's good. Feels like almost no one's talking about this. At least Mississippi is talking about it. I don't know if I even agree with how the law is being implemented, but some law needs to be on the books regarding this and then what I'm about to read you about Texas. The justices rejected an emergency appeal from a tech industry group, NetChoice, that is challenging laws passed in Mississippi and other states that require social media users to verify their age. The court had been asked to keep the law on hold while the lawsuit plays out. So basically, there's a lawsuit going on. This case said, all right, just don't allow them to enforce it right now. Let the lawsuit go through. Then they can enforce it depending on how the lawsuit goes. There were no noted dissents from the brief, unsigned order. But Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote to say that NetChoice could eventually succeed in showing that the law is indeed unconstitutional. So based on how they phrased it, the Supreme Court, it is unconstitutional. But Kavanaugh, he's only one of them. But he has said it's possible the argument can be made that that age verification law in Mississippi is unconstitutional. Kavanaugh then, he nevertheless said he agreed with the court's decision because the tech group had not shown it would suffer legal harm if the measure went into full effect as the lawsuit unfolded. NetChoice argues that the Mississippi law threatens privacy rights and unconstitutionally restricts the free expression of users of all ages. A federal judge agreed and prevented the 2024 law from taking effect. But a 3-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals ruled in July that the law could be enforced while the lawsuit proceeds. It's the latest legal development as court challenges play out against similar laws in states across the country. Parents and even some teenagers are growing increasingly concerned about the effects of social media use on young people. Supporters of the new laws have said they are needed to help curb the explosive use of social media among young people and what researchers say is an associated increase in depression and anxiety. There's problems with social media. I will just tell you. I know that the more time I spend on social media, the less I like it, which is why I take breaks. On Sunday, I do almost no social media. I might do 2 posts, look at 1 or 2 things, and that's about it. I restrict on Sundays as much as I can. And during the week, there's even times where I'm like, man, I've been on Twitter way too long, or X way too long. And some of it is hard because it's a tool I got to use to reach you. But everyone needs breaks, and especially for really young people. I'm 27, for like a 17-year-old or a 13-year-old. They really are just all addicted to it, a lot of them. And as a result, there's some arguments being made that we need to do something to help children and parents as well. Because especially if it's leading to anxiety and depression, that's really bad. Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch told the justices that age verification could help protect young people from sexual abuse, trafficking, physical violence, sextortion, so like sexual extortion, I guess, and more. Activities that Fitch noted are not protected by the First Amendment. That's a good point. It's not. Trafficking and physical violence, sextortion, and sexual abuse are definitely not protected by the First Amendment. And for those of you who want to say, well, somehow porn is protected by the First Amendment, you're really, really dumb. I mean, you're just completely an idiot. NetChoice represents some of the country's most high-profile technological companies, including Google, which owns YouTube, Snap Inc., the parent company of Snapchat, and Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram. NetChoice has filed similar lawsuits in Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, and Utah. So that was an interesting article regarding social media. There's another article that I have. Where did it go? Texas. Court allows Texas law on age verification for pornography sites. So it looks like it's also the Supreme Court. Let me read it. In a major First Amendment decision, the Supreme Court on Friday upheld a ruling by a federal appeals court that allowed Texas to enforce a state law requiring pornography sites to verify the age of their users before providing access. By a vote of 6-3, the justices ruled that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit should have used a more stringent standard of review, known as intermediate scrutiny, to determine whether the Texas law passes constitutional muster. But as Justice Clarence Thomas wrote for the majority, the Texas law passes that test. The power to require age verification is within a state's authority to prevent children from accessing sexually explicit content. Again, the 10th Amendment is part of our Bill of Rights. There should be basically 50 experiments going on in this country. This state does this way. This state does it that way. And if you don't like it, you can vote. You can get involved in politics. There's ways you can get involved and change things in your state, in your municipality, so forth and so on. The 10th Amendment is on the books, and it's important. So this age verification is a pretty good way of doing it, because I don't want a 12 or 14-year-old on the internet. Heck, there's people that are younger than that, like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, who are looking at porn. And an age verification law may force them into not being able to use it. Now, some of them are going to grab dad's driver's license and do something that they shouldn't do. Yeah. But we should never use that argument to say, well, we should just let anybody look at porn. Well, if they're going to look at it illegally anyway, we might as well just let them look at porn. That's a really dumb argument. We don't say that about hiring a hitman or murder. We don't say that about but laws are for people that follow things the legal way. Criminals are going to break the law, so do we really have to prosecute theft? That's California's argument, right? Pornography is evil. It damages the brain. It damages the soul. Our studies talking about how it damages the brain. It is a drug, and as a result, there should be laws on the books regarding verifying and making sure. If we're going to card people going to an alcohol store or whatever, liquor store, card them and look at their ID and make sure, there should be some kind of an age verification for other crap online. And again, I want all that crap online to be banned, but at least this move in Texas is a step in the direction of protecting children. Ultimately, I want all pornography banned, and I think a lot of right-wingers are with me on that. Because again, like I said just a second ago, show me in the Constitution where you have the right to abortion, but also the right to pornography, where your freedom of speech is that was what was in mind. Your right to make porn is what the founders had in mind when they made the First Amendment. Bull crap, nonsense. And it's evil and wrong, and these men knew that it was important, imperative for this nation to have Christian values, and pornography goes completely against Christian values. So although the law should go further than this Texas law, at least they're trying to protect children, and I take my hat off to them for that. And I also take my hat off to the Supreme Court trying to protect children. So that is a good thing. Very glad to have seen that happen. Okay, now a couple other big stories to read.